If you want to hear how I used the products from the palette Roulette, the palette collection Roulette, then stick around. Hi there, it's Hélène with another video, and this is the wrap up for round 5 of the palette collection Roulette. I was calling it the palette Roulette, but I think that was a little bit confusing. I think palette collection Roulette makes a whole lot more sense. It is going into my stash with your help and using specific products for a period of time. It's usually around 2 weeks. Well, this time 4 people submitted their picks for eyeshadow palettes, face palettes, and then this other category of products that helps oomph a look. I'll get into that if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about. But with the 4 people who selected products, I had my hands very full. I think I started on July 21st, and we are now into the second week of August, August 8th. So that has been quite a bit of time for me to use all these products, though I did use some more than others. So I have 3 things to talk about. First off, I have the individuals who provided some numbers for me, so selections. I also have the amount of usage from each one of the categories of products. And then I want to introduce how you can participate again or for the first time in the 6th round of the palette collection Roulette. And I'll explain some of that later on in this video. If you are curious to know how to get into this or get involved, I will put a timestamp right here and you can go and take a look at how it works. For now, what I want to do is go person to person on what everyone picked and what the selections were and telling you about my usage of them. And I will have a bunch of pictures, as usual, pop up on screen right over here so that you can see the looks that I came up with. If you do not want to wait over 2 weeks to see what I was doing with your selections, please take a look at the Instagram that I have listed up there. You can see looks pretty much as I do them, although this past week I did 3 or 4 Instagram uploads all in one shot because I was a little bit behind. Let's get into the individuals who made some selections for me. The first one that I have on my list is Julie. And Julie said she wanted to be lazy this last time and she picked 3 numbers, 1, 2, and 3. 1 for eyeshadow palettes, 2 for face palettes, and 3 for the other category. And I think that was great that she told me why it was 1, 2, 3, and that's great. And the time before, Julie had picked numbers based on her birthday, and there is another birthday gal from July, and I will get to her when we go down the list. But let's talk about Julie's picks for now. For eyeshadow palette, she did pick number 1, as I mentioned, and number 1 was the Marc Jacobs Leopard Frost, and this is what it looks like. And this palette, if you do watch my other videos, you will note that it is also in my rolling PanCollab, the panning project that I have, just one last update, and I did mention in that project that I was trying to use up this one and this one. You can see that there's not that much there. So this one was a dual purpose palette and I ended up using it for both projects, this challenge and also the rolling, Roulette PanCollab is what it's called. If you want to check out a bunch of videos on that Roulette PanCollab, I'll just put the hashtag right here so you can take a look. Out of this palette, I used, for the most part, I used On the Runway, I used Serving Up, and Hey Girl Hey. And I don't think I really used anything else. I may have used this one, which is You Slay, but I think I didn't this time around. But like I said, I was trying to use up some shadows and very, very little left here and not that much left here as well. It's a palette that ended up falling and broke, and I'm just trying to clear up some pans so that I can fill it up with some different product. If you are not familiar with the Marc Jacobs palettes slash compacts, they are very slippery, and this thing literally fell right out of my hand onto the floor, and that's how I lost about half the product. I was very, very upset about that because I only got it in December, and I'm going to mitigate my sorrow by refilling those pans that I just showed you. Now, how often did I use this one? Like I said, I was using it for a few different purposes. So in the span of time for this project, I ended up using it 10 times. That is a lot. So 10 times on this one. And it always does very, very nice looks. I had an interview to go to in the last couple weeks, and I did choose this palette along with my Smashbox Matte Exposure as, oh, and a little bit of Tarte. I used those to do my interview eye look, and I think it turned out really, really nicely. So I do recommend it as long as you don't have fumbly fingers like I do. So thank you, Julie, for that palette. It was very nice to have it in this project, or this round of the roulette. And the next one that Julie picked, which was her number 2, was the Maybelline Lip Color Palette. Now, you will notice that some of them have been used and some of them not. It's hard to open. You'll see that I have used 5 of them, but not all of them. And so these 3 at the front, I could have used this one, I guess, and then these 2 at the back. But these right in the middle, I just didn't feel like they were all that summery. I felt like I would use those colors in the winter, and so I just didn't go for it. But the ones that I did use, especially these right here, I really enjoyed, and I was surprised by how much I liked that last color at the end. Really, really nice color. Do I have a problem with it? Not. I don't have a problem with the colors at all. I do hate this kind of a brush though. And so I find it very messy. I find it just falls out of the palette. And I think that what I would use more so with this palette is a retractable lip brush, so that if it falls out of this palette or that I have it separately, it's not going to end up back on my lips. So I'm okay with it. If you don't tend to wear color a whole lot, a palette like this might be a good solution because you can have access to a bunch of different colorful lipstick without having to go out and buy a full size of all the different colors that you may want to use once or twice a year. So I don't mind lip palettes. I think they have their place. But I do like colorful lipstick, so this one, I'm glad it's in a project like this because it does make me use it. The lipsticks were fine quality, they worked well. Some of them, the darker ones, I did have to use a lip liner just to make sure it didn't go out of the lines, because fine lines, when you've got a very creamy lipstick, it can very easily bleed outside of your lip line. And just to kind of close off this lip palette, I did use 6 times out of the time I was working on this round. And for the other category, Julie chose number 3, hence the 1, 2, 3. And I ended up using the lightning liners. These are the 2 that I used. I used Poe and Hide. So nice brown and a nice kind of purpley blue, but more toward the purple. And I really did enjoy using them. They are metallic liners, and you can do a very fine line on, well, anywhere you want on the eye, or you can also fill in part of your lid with these. And I wasn't using them enough. I'm happy they're in the other category as a category to select. And I'm surprised that I didn't use more than 2 because I have a total of 7, but at least I used a couple of them, and my awareness of them and just how nice they are, it was a nice reminder that this was picked. And I'm probably going to dip into the lightning liners from Kat Von D again. Now, they are a discontinued product, but you can find all sorts of metallic liners. This is definitely not the only product that was out there. So we have covered Julie's selections, and we are now on to Lydia. And Lydia wanted to select 13 for all categories, but 2 other people had selected the number 13 for different categories. So let's go with the one that Lydia did choose, that was number 13. and that was the palette, the eyeshadow palette. So let me show you that one. I have a love-hate relationship with this palette because I don't like round palettes. Here's what the inside looks like. And I did 3 distinct looks with this palette. I used, in one look, I used the greens. In another look, I used the purples and reds. And what was my third one? Oh, third one was more into staying in with the browns. And so green, browns, and a purpley red look. Those were all very nice. And if anything, the green is really outside my comfort zone, but I do think that that look in particular turned out quite nicely. And as a matter of fact, I got a compliment from my husband. So obviously it didn't look too bad. But I have to say, in this palette specifically, that this area of the palette is where I'm happiest, is in the reds and purples. So anyway, I thought the looks came out just fine. I enjoyed using this palette, but I did not use it that much because I have done a lot of looks. I think I did 5 looks on camera with this palette, and I think I was having a little bit of palette fatigue because it wasn't that long ago that I did the looks, and I just wanted to use other palettes that were selected. But it does not mean that this is not a very good palette. It's versatile, and a lot of the eyeshadows in here, as is typical for Urban Decay, are kind of different, interesting in their own right. The next category that Lydia picked was the other category, and she picked number 1. And number 1 happened to be the Moondust liquid shadows. And out of this whole group, I really did think I was going to use Zodiac. And I think I ended up using it beforehand. I did certainly, though, use these 2. And these 2 are Majestic, I think. No, pardon me, Magnetic and Solstice. So Magnetic is on the top, Solstice is on the bottom. I really enjoyed both of them. They work really well directly on the lid, as much or as little as you want, or they work as a liner because the brush is very fine. Let me show you. The brush looks like this, and so you can apply it in a finer line, or you can apply it all over the lid. There's a couple of lines here for you. So they apply really, really well. You just need to let them dry, and they do not budge once they're on and they are dry on the lid. I really do like the Moondusts. I will probably continue to wear them beyond this selection. But I really do like them for both purposes, for liner and for all over the lid. But I will say that the deeper colors are the ones that I prefer as liner, and then the lighter colors tend to be easier, more wearable on the lid for most people. But I do endorse this product. I really quite enjoy it, and it was a good reminder. I'm asking myself, why don't I use these more? So it's really nice to have them in this Roulette project. And finally, because some of the numbers that Lydia chose were overlapping, I randomized for Lydia the 3rd number, and it ended up being the Master Contour Palette by Maybelline. This is my preferred palette for a very, very simple palette for travel, and it looks like this. And there is a contour that is sort of neutral, not really cool, not really warm, and it works for pretty much all the purposes. The blush it looks very pinky, but it looks quite natural, at least on my tone on my face, and then the highlight is quite nice. I have no problem with this. I ended up using it 4 times, including today, and I like it. It's just, if you don't want to have to think about contour slash bronzer, blush, and highlight, this is very simple, assuming that it fits with your complexion. Those were all 3 of Lydia's picks, the Element, the Master Contour, and the Moondust, and we are now moving on to Stephanie. And Steph was the other birthday girl in July, And she did tell me about the numbers that she chose and how they relate to her birthday. And Steph chose 27, 13, and 7. And let's talk about those. And I think that 7 was for the month of July, 13 was her birth date, and 27 was the age she is turning, if memory serves. Steph, if I've got them wrong, I'm sorry. I thought that was the right combo, but anyway, let me know if I messed it up. Let's take a look at her picks. First, for the palette was number 27, and the palette is the Zulu by Juvia's Place, and this is a palette that I really had not used yet, and so I've got a swatch video if you want to see it, because it's pretty new to my collection, and I still have the plastic. Here is the palette, and because it's fairly new in my collection, I wanted to make sure to use every single color, and I did manage to do that. I did quite a few looks. I did one look. My first look was with this brown and with this pink, and it was a very, very nice, neutral, simple look that I could have done with a neutral palette. And this brown is very buildable. So I was able to have a wash of brown and then that shimmery duochrome on the lid. It looked really good. And I just ended up intensifying the brown on the outer lid. It looked great. I ended up using these colors as well. Together, they looked really nice. They were not as deep as I thought, but they were definitely buildable if I wanted more. I definitely love this color. It's my favorite one out of the whole palette, but I'm a sucker for lime green. I just love it. And then the last look I did was with these two shadows, because I'm just a real chicken when it comes to turquoisey, bluish greens. And it turned out pretty nice as well. I was impressed with how all of these colors frankly looked, and I came up with some pretty bam looks with this palette. And well, I knew that I was going to love it when I did get it from Juvia's Place, but I don't think I realized just how much I would like this palette. It is a bit intimidating, I could say that, but I really, really enjoyed every single look I came up with. So thank you, Steph, for picking this palette, because it gave me a lot of playtime. The next number, if you'll recall, in Steph's list was number 13. And number 13 ended up being a nice highlighting palette. And this is the Afterglow from Urban Decay. And I take this highlighter palette with me when I'm on the go. I did take this palette the last time I had a trip, and it looks like this. And the ones I used the most out of the whole palette were Cliché. Let's see here, yeah, these three. So Wicked up here. Hopefully the colors are coming through. Wicked, ONS, and Cliché. Those were the three that I used the most. I did use this one as well a couple of times, No Angel, but I'm not as big of a fan of that one as the other ones. But it's, hopefully the colors are coming through. I can't really tell in my viewfinder. I really like this little highlighter palette. It didn't get fantastic reviews from some folks I watch on YouTube, but I really like it. And it was nice to have a rosy highlight when I was into pinks and purples. It was nice to have more brown highlight, more gold highlight, more white gold highlight. It was just nice to have that combination along with another highlighter in that Master Contour palette. No complaints on this. I was pretty happy. And I used it quite a few times. Yeah, 10 times. I used this 10 times during the couple weeks I was doing this latest round. And now the last product that Steph had selected for me was number 7, and that is the Butter London Glazen Eyeglosses. And let me switch them around because you'll be able to see the colors. Very, very interesting colors. If you want a very dramatic lid, the Glazen Eyeglosses from Butter London are amazing. They have kind of a jelly consistency. And although I'm going to say one thing, if you have the Moondust in Solstice, it is virtually the same on the eye as this one. So if you have one, you probably don't need the other, and I thought I would just at least mention that. But they're both beautiful. Let me just give you a swatch of these. They're just neat. So here's what it looks like inside. And you really want to shut them tight because they will dry out on you. And so I keep them tightly closed and in a glass jar so that less air exposure gets to them. So they're covered kind of, I guess, like some of the ColourPop, what are they called? Super Shock shadows or something. And then this is the Mermaid. I keep wanting to call it Mermaid Tail, but it's Mermaid. And so this is Oil Slick right here. And this is Mermaid Tail. I could have built it up more, but I think you get the sense of it. It looks so good on, I prefer to put them on the inner to center lid. I love these things. They're beautiful, and every time I wear them, I wonder why I don't wear them more. Now, last but not least, we have Susan. Thank you for your patience, Susan. I'm getting you to your stuff right now. And Susan chose the following numbers for me. 52 for eyeshadow palette, 6 for face palette, and 13 for other. So let's take a look at those products. For eyeshadow palettes, she chose, and it does not look like it should because I depotted this palette, she chose the 39S from Morphe. If you want to see the swatches video for that palette, I will put it right there, and you can see the original packaging for that palette. And it now looks like this. So there are some of the colors. Hopefully you can see them all. Let's try that. Hopefully they come through on screen quite nicely. A lot of purples and pinks, which is what I wanted, along with some kind of bronzy and goldy browns, and some mattes too that are pretty nice. And this is the remainder of the palette. And the only one that's a little weird is this one that is a real glitter shade, I guess. But I really enjoy these big pans. That was the biggest discovery, I think, for this 39S. I knew I was going to get a lot of pinks and purples, but those transformation big pans they really are great. Let me just swatch a couple of them for you. On the lid, center lid, inner lid, they really make your eye look just that much more interesting, and I really enjoyed wearing them. I think I have all of 4 decent looks here. Let's see if I can show you. Hopefully I didn't swatch the same one twice. No, I didn't. So I don't know if they'll show up all that much, but there they are kind of on my wrist there. And they're neat because they let the other color that you already have on the lid show through, but they add some beautiful shimmer to the look. And I sometimes think that on camera doesn't do it justice, but the eye looks I did with the 39S, almost every look I ended up going into those toppers. So that just tells you that once I used them a couple of times, I was sold on the fact that they just take the eye look to the next level. And I'm very happy with the purchase of the 39S. I think it complemented my current access to pinks and purples very, very nicely. And I also did a pretty neat kind of smoky look, and I also did a brown look with the shadows as well. And I would say that the palette is pretty versatile, though it should be at 39 shadows. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this specific purchase, and am very, happy with the looks I came up with. So happy, in fact, I ended up using this palette 7 times during this whole round 5. The next palette that Susan chose was the Cheekathon, and the Benefit Cheekathon, it is depotted, but this is what it looks like. Hopefully you can see the colors. So we have the Hoola bronzer that has, I don't know if you'll be able to see on camera, it has quite a good dip. So the Hoola bronzer, this is the Coralista, the Dallas blush, This is the Dandelion and the Rockateur. And out of the whole bunch, I did end up using, I used the Hoola a lot. I used the Dallas a few times. I used Coralista once, the Dandelion once, and then Rockateur. So Rockateur and Dallas are the two that I used the most, but the product out of the whole pan here, or the whole palette here, the one I used the most out of all of them is definitely the Hoola bronzer. I think benefit when it comes to face powders, bronzers, blushes, they do a very good job. And I like their highlighters too. The Cheekathon just doesn't have a highlighter in it. And why are they depotted? Because I do like taking one or two of these blushes, bronzers with me traveling. It's very, very simple to do when you can just transfer a couple of pans into a smaller magnetic palette. Like I said, really like Benefit blushes, and it was really nice to be able to use them during this challenge. And I ended up using the Cheekathon a total of 8 times during this challenge. Now the final number picked by Susan and the final number overall is number 13 for the category Other. And this is what it ended up being. And it's the Sephora waterproof, what are they called? Waterproof colorful eyeliner, 24-hour eyeliner. And you'll see that I have quite a few. And I'm a little bit embarrassed with this category because out of all these beautiful colors, I used 2 of them. And I used the most boring ones. Now, they do look boring compared to the other ones, but they're actually quite nice. Let me show you. So two out of the 6. Now this first one is called Animal Instinct, and you do really have to shake these so that you have a good amount of product coming out. Otherwise they are quite watery. There's quite a bit of sediment inside the liner. There we go. So I'm not kidding. You have to shake these quite a bit. I think they're discontinued, but here we go. I do like the micro shimmer that is in them. And as a matter of fact, I have this one, Starry Night on, or Starry Sky, Starry Night, Starry Sky on my upper lash line today. So that's Starry Sky right there. Hopefully you can see the micro shimmer. And next to it right here is Animal Instinct. So they're nice if you want to do something other than a plain black eyeliner. I think that they're nice. Don't judge this liner for my botched wings. I just did not have a steady hand today, and I did some cousin wings as opposed to twins. So that's just what happened. And for this category, I ended up using them twice, so once for each one of these. Although I did end up using this one right before this round 5. So I guess I had just used this one, and it might be what prompted me to put an other category actually in this palette roulette. I think that that's what actually happened, and so pretty happy to have added that category. Something I thought that was going to be kind of interesting was to do a sum of all of the usage per person. So I thought I would share that. The person who got the most use, or I got the most use out of their selections, was Julie. I used her products a total of 18 times combined. Next closest is a tie between Steph and Susan. I used their products all together a total of 17 times. And Lydia had the smallest number at 8 total uses, but there's a reason. I mentioned earlier that I had already used the Elements palette quite a bit more recently than the other selections, and so that meant that I didn't want to focus so much on that palette. And also the Moondust and the Master Contour, which is that highlight, the blush, and the contour color. It's only a trio, and I was pulled more toward the Benefit than the the Master Contour, and also pulled more to the Afterglow from Urban Decay because there were 4 selections in there compared to the single selection in the Master Contour. So 2 out of the 3 were just products that I was not so much drawn to. And so that's just the way it panned out for those selections. Now let's talk about selections for round 6. If you are interested in chiming in with some selections, here's how it works. For this round 6, here are the ranges. For eyeshadow palettes, you can pick between 1 and 79. 1 and 79. For face palettes, you can pick between 1 and 15. 1 and 15. And finally, for the other category, you can pick between 1 and 13. So once again, for palettes between 1 and 79, face palettes between 1 and 15, and for the other category, 1 to 13. So what you want to do is you want to let me know which category you're giving me a number for and the number. So for example, eyeshadow palette 5, face palette 13, other category 2, or something like that. Just give me the category and the number in sequence so that I can make sure not to make a mistake. And just as Julie and Steph have told me, tell me what the story is if there's a story behind the numbers that you are using. I will definitely talk about it in a video if you want me to. Obviously, if you're putting it in the comments, it's probably not private. And I will enjoy doing that because it's so neat. Numbers mean different things to different people, and it's really neat to hear the whys of the numbers that you chose to include in your picks. That is it. I'm looking forward to hearing what your selections are. Usually I have it open for 3 or 4 days, and when I have a handful of sets of selections, I close it off and will report back and show you what the numbers correspond to as far as products. And I usually leave it for somewhere between 3 or 4 days, depending on how much input I get. Once there is enough, I will close it off and come back and show you the products that correspond to the numbers that you have selected. Thank you so much. I do hope that you will participate. I would love to hear what you thought of all the looks in the comments below. Please let me know what you think. Are there colors that you're happy I used? Are there colors you wish I had used? I'd be very curious to know what you think of all of the looks. And if you think that there are some other combinations or ways that I could have used the products, by all means, let me know. I'd be very curious to hear that as well. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it every time, and I do look forward to seeing you in the next video. But for now, take care.